Founders, what's going on? You guys know I love in-person events, and they are back. The recording you're about to hear is from our most recent event where we had hundreds of founders come together, share intimate details, templates, KPIs, OKRs about their business, and it was something special, We'd love to meet you in person. If you want to see the next live events we have coming up via our schedule, the link will be down below in the description. If you're listening on iTunes, check this out on YouTube. You'll see the links in the description, or you can just Google Founder Path or Latka next event. We'd love to see you in person. In the meantime, though, enjoy this recording. It's a good one.
Hi, I'm Mikita, and I struggle with titles for presentations. This one I changed over and over, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 times. Nathan's team probably hates me. I promise I won't give you a winning formula. I don't have a winning formula. What I want to do today is share my very own, very personal journey, set of epiphanies and learnings, and hopefully some of those are going to be helpful, useful, or otherwise. The bigger the company gets, the more fun I seem to have. I started loving my job, I think right after we hit about $10 million in ARR, and it only gets better. So for those of you folks who recently started business, for those of you in early stages, if you want to get a hug, I'm available, because it was really hard for me back in the day. It was really hard. And I try to be dramatic, spice it up so that Nathan can get more clicks. And I call this a journey from hell to heaven. We're far from heaven. A lot can be better, but sure thing where we are today is a lot more fun compared to 10 years ago when I landed myself in San Francisco, came from Eastern Europe. I didn't work at a good SaaS company prior to PandaDoc. I didn't work at a good company, period, prior to PandaDoc. I didn't go to a good school. I dropped out of a bad school in a third world country, so I didn't know much. Therefore, I had a lot to learn. And we had a negative net dollar retention. We constantly missed board plans. I don't know how investors funded us. I wouldn't. We had really bad employee retention. If you guys Google our early Glassdoor reviews, those are glaring and pretty accurate as well. And no one wanted to fund us. In order to raise a Series A, I had to meet more than hundreds of people. I'm not kidding. And I've heard all that wonderful feedback. Some of it was helpful, but worst of all, we didn't really have a life. We worked 16-hour days, and I wouldn't say it was very rewarding. So now, how the heaven looks like. Again, we're far from heaven. A lot could be done better. But I'm much happier today than I was back in the day. I have a life. I can spend time with kids. Over the course of the last 4 years, our growth has been accelerating, which is atypical. The bigger you get, the harder it is to grow. We were fortunate with growing faster, a little faster, a couple of percentage points year over year. We got something that a lot of people seem to care about. We got a horny valuation, call it, and things seem to be good, unless some dictators start wars where we operate. That's a separate topic. So things seem to be improving. Things seem to be getting better, and I try to reflect on the last 10 years, and I'm an engineer. I try to kind of put it together in a matrix, in some kind of system. And reflecting back, I singled out 3 epiphanies around people, context, and written, and 9 different tactics or action items or investment areas. Call them whatever you want. And that's the stuff I'm going to be talking today. Again, I was reflecting back to 10 years ago when I came from Belarus. I knew very little. I had a lot to learn. Some of those things, maybe all of those things, are going to be obvious. And if so, treat them as a reminder. Otherwise, I hope you like them. So the first one is people matter the most. When I landed in San Francisco and when I was going to those big tech conferences and watched successful CEOs, founders of big companies who all they did is talked about people and culture. In the back of my mind, I was like, but what's that feature that you built that actually got you there? What is that? I don't know, maybe it was a celebrity investor that you got. Maybe it was the customer. Maybe it was the market. Like, what's that hack that got you there? And you know what? Turns out I think there's no hack. I think people matter the most. And I don't really remember how I got this epiphany. Maybe it was after yet another fuck up. But once I started thinking this way, I started investing and making people my co-founders' main focus. As a result of this, the first thing that we get very serious about was recruiting. Recruiting became my #1 job. It still is. Here you can see some numbers. Hiring a CRO is a pretty common challenge that a lot of CEOs go through and discuss and so on and so forth. So I had to go through more than 900 candidates before we actually hired a CRO. It's not because more than 900 people were not a good fit. Dozens of people that I had conversations with or interviewed believe that PandaDoc is not a good fit. Rightfully so. But every conversation got me a little further, because every conversation with a smart, capable individual who knows more is a learning opportunity. So here are some of the real numbers from 2001 that I think we made possible because we focused on recruiting big times over the course of last 10 years. Recruiting is important. You get great people, but that's not enough. At the very least, they got to be onboarded. And that revelation came to me a little later, and that's one of the action items, one of the investment areas that that I focused a lot of my time on. All of you have onboarding materials, and I'm sure everyone takes it seriously. I'll just highlight what I think we implemented. That's fun. That's cool. One of those initiatives is called Who Am I?, where every newcomer is asked to create a small presentation about themselves as human beings. Not, I'm an engineer, code on Python, and I've worked at this and that company, and I know this and that framework, but rather, I'm a dad of 2 children, my hobbies are this, I like this, I dislike that, and those presentations are given within the teams that people join to, so that there's a human connection, this little human connection that happens. Then another thing that my co-founder and I started back in the days, we launched Meet the Founders recurring call, where every newcomer, we get groups of newcomers that we just shoot shit with. They ask us questions, we ask them questions, we really have an agenda, but we try to, again, appear as humans, not like two guys in a castle, but someone they can reach out to, Slack, whatever. Then, once you have great people, what I found is that they have the same, similar set of desires. They all want to learn and grow. And when that revelation came, I thought of all the different things and techniques that I can do in order to enable them learn and grow while at PandaDoc. We launched things like education budgets that every employee can use at their discretion on things like conferences, books, courses, and so on and so forth. That's pretty typical. We allocated a certain amount of equity so that people can find advisors, mentors for themselves. We enabled enabled all of our managers to have board access. They got to reach out to our investors. They can. And two things that may not be that typical. Actually, one thing that may not be that typical. We have a mental health budget that people can spend on therapy, because that's one of those things that makes us better, makes us calmer. And in many cases, people, work issues is what gets brought in to therapy and what gets cured through it. One little thing is like, even in early days, I didn't get it. I didn't get that titles are important. Not even titles are important. Progression through titles is important. But I wish I've implemented that earlier, so that especially young folks that start as support reps, SDRs, every 6, 9, 12 months, there's an opportunity for them to get a promotion, to get a little bump. Why is that important? Well, you want to feel like you're growing, but it's also important that people around you know that. And then finally, we realized that we have to, great people onboarded with an opportunity to learn. It's all good stuff. But what gets the work done is teamwork. And teamwork requires human connection. And making human connection happen after you got 20, 30, 40 employees is an actual effort. So again, I'm sure many of you know this and you guys are investing in it. I'll just highlight one thing that I find cool. One of our employees during pandemic came up with this initiative called Ripped Pandas. She set up a Slack channel where the team members broke into the little teams, and where we were competing on who's going to exercise more. Every time after you exercise, you have to take a photo, send in that channel, and that counts. So what that created is there's a competition, it's fun, but then you look at people that you normally know through a business setting, who are sweating, and they're humans, and you realize that we're all people, and you get to know them again a little better. You get connected to one another a little more. So people matter the most. That was my first epiphany. Very obvious for some. It was not obvious for me. But it was not enough. Having great people by your side is not enough. What was also important, and what I realized later, is that it's important to enable them with the right context. It's important to enable them with the same context that I have. So I've been at it for 12 years now. We had a different product. Oh, by the way, I should have said what PandaDoc does, right? Any of you are customers? All right, some. Nice. For the rest of you, who's paying for e-signature subscription? Everybody. This stuff is free with PandaDoc. I like the look in your eyes. This stuff is free with PandaDoc, and then on top of that, we do contract management, proposal automation, quote to cash, and that stuff is not free. But e-signing is free. All right, so context is important. It was important to build context for the great people. Because as long as great people have the right context, they're going to come up with those ideas. You don't have to come up with all the ideas. You don't have to over-communicate. They're going to do it for you. And especially with the ideas, there are no ideas that are better than your own. They're like children, in a way. So context and building that context was the next epiphany that I personally had. And doing that, building context, my co-founder and I decided to start at a very high level, inspired by start with why. We first, when things were really bad, we asked ourselves, why the hell are we suffering through this? Why are we feeling it was not fun, it was not easy in the very, very early days. So we try to think about what are the things that we want to get out of this outside the financial rewards. Because financial rewards, you get a few bumps in happiness. You get happier when you're financially independent. You get a little happier when you feel like you are rich. You get maybe a tiny bit happier when you're very rich. But then that's it. It doesn't matter afterwards, right? So we started to think about what's there for us beyond those numbers. And it took us a while, vipassanas, whatnot. But the things that we found that are important to both of us are learning and teaching, making a positive impact on people that surround us and communities that we belong to. It was important for us to have fun, and it was important for us to be empathetic to people that we work with, that surround us, to our customers. Once we formed that into concrete statements, we shared it, and we try to do pretty much everything we've been doing within the business. We try to align with those values. Benefits, the stances, the actions, we try to align it with these 4 values. Then the values translated into the culture code. We decided to write down who we aspire to be, how we aspire the work to be done, and what we aspire the culture within the company to be. And when I say aspire, I mean we're human beings. We slip all the time. So at the very least, this document became a way for my co-founder and I to call each other on bullshit. And as well as our employees, because we shared it with the team, right? To call us on, hey, Mikita, you say being data-driven is a part of our culture, but for the last 30 minutes you were pulling stuff out of so what's up? And then you go, oh yeah, sorry. Next couple of artifacts that were incredibly important were our mission and vision. I'm sure you all have it. But values, culture code, mission and vision, every company has it. I think the key is figuring out a way to make sure that not only you, but also everyone on your team has this context. The way we were able to do that is we first started putting it in every presentation that we gave, every presentation, all hands, meeting updates, doesn't matter, board meetings. My investors have fed up with 3 slides, which are vision, mission, values, North Star. Every board update starts with that stuff. So it becomes like mantra, we repeat it over and over and over and over again, and then somehow like our managers and directors picked up this trend, so now every presentation in PandaDoc starts with 3 slides that are the same. So, all right, we got great people. They know what our values are. They kind of know where we're going and why. But what is that we're actually doing? That's where strategy comes into the play. And every company has a strategy. So do we. This is something that I started writing in Google Docs, sharing with my co-founder, my executive team. Half of it was destroyed, changed, edited. And like my first few attempts were very humbling. I was like, holy shit, I spent 2 weeks writing this thing down. No one likes it. Then I take another step. No one likes it. And another step. And then like slowly we're coming somewhere, we're getting somewhere, and so on and so forth. And then I'm like, oh, we're actually building it together. Oh, that brings a much better alignment in my team. So why don't we expose it further? So now the company is big, 750 people plus. Therefore, not everyone can write a strategy. However, we still distribute that Google Doc that everyone can leave a comment on or make a suggestion. And I'm the guy who minds it and responds to those comments. Why? Again, because it helps to build the buy-in. So we kind of know what we're doing, but then how are we doing? That's another important piece, right? And again, like every company got KPIs. We used to have KPIs 5-10 years ago. But in order to get the actual data, you had to ask finance or go to the data person and send an email and so on and so forth. So like one of the big efforts that we made was to make data as accessible, KPIs as accessible as possible. Put them in Google spreadsheets. Every team has their own spreadsheet. Finance team maintains those spreadsheets month over month. But again, everyone has their KPIs in real time. Same as data. We decided at some point that it's easier to be completely transparent so that people have context. And then finally, all of that was still not enough. The one last piece that I recall is that at some point, my co-founder and I decided to drive a culture of getting feedback everywhere at any time at any point. We needed to make feedback a part of our culture. So what kind of feedback? Feedback from employees so that we know what's happening, so that I have the context, so that my executives have the context, my co-founder has context, every manager has a context. Market, right? G2 Crowd, Glassdoor, ENPS, employee NPS. Like we gather that data and try to see the why. What is not working? What do we need to get better at? And then finally, I asked for reviews. I asked my team to review myself. I asked my board to review myself. They don't always do that, Scott. But when they do, that typically helps. So great people that have context, that makes a big difference. Made my job a lot easier. But again, that was not enough. The last epiphany that I had was that fantastic, talented athlete is not going to win the Olympics unless that athlete trains regularly, the same amount of time, more and more effort. So, setting the rhythm for the business was the last epiphany and one of the important ones. KPIs helped us set the rhythm. Yeah, like knowing where we are against where we wanted to go definitely helps. But then figuring out how do we get to those KPIs was another really important revelation. I don't know how many years ago, 7, 8 years, whatever, but we set on OKRs. It's been working for us really well. I highly recommend to do that. But KPIs and OKRs are helpful. It's good. You set the rhythm. But what's, I think, the glue, the oil that helps it all move is how you communicate around it. So the cadence of meetings, meetings around those KPIs, meetings around the OKRs was another important revelation that and implementation that we've done within the company that helps to set that rhythm, that set us into motion, set us into running. And then finally, the last thing was the reviews. I shared a little bit about the titles. In our early days, we've done promotions and we've done feedback sessions, feedback reviews, whenever managers felt like it was important. But as the company scaled, we learned that it's really hard to have a really good cadence. It's really hard to have the same format. And a lot of the managers that we have are new managers. So we decided to do performance reviews twice a year. We decided to have a cadence, rituals, processes around it. We templatized the hell out of it. And now everyone knows when the promotions are due, when the feedback is due, and how the reviews need to happen. It became a part of the culture, became a part of the mantra. So, 3 epiphanies. People matter the most. Context, as long as you enable those people with the right context, great things are bound to happen. And then when the company is set into a rhythm, the results are going to come fast. That's my learning over the course of the last 10 years. Thank you very much.
Mikita, let me jump in. Guys, give Mikita a round of applause for the content here. Incredible content. Mikita, I'm right in front of you, so let me tee up some structure. I want to invite Scott to the stage. There's a mic on stage for him with Mikita. Mikita, to the extent that you'd love, I'd love for you guys to touch on, obviously, the very difficult situation related to Ukraine right now. We'll have a conversation here. You guys sort of going back and forth for maybe 5-10 minutes. Mikita, maybe kick us off. How many folks do you have in Ukraine and Belarus in that area?
So this is my last slide. If you like my presentation, donate. If you don't like my presentation, still donate. It's the right thing to do, okay? Yeah. We started PandaDoc in Belarus as a different company, different product in 2010. We launched PandaDoc in 2013-14. The dictator in Belarus, unfortunately, had a crusade on human rights and PandaDoc. So we had to leave Belarus, opened an office in Ukraine, scaled to about 200 people in Ukraine. And yeah, things are hard there. Please donate. Those of you who are going to be the most generous are going to get a very valuable prize.
Mikita, help people sort of feel this a bit more. Scott, you're a board member. I mean, to the extent that you guys can, help sort of quantify what's actually happening. The dollars invested, the time invested, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to help? What's the plan?
Yeah. How many people traveled from outside the U.S. to come to this event?
Well, about half.
How many people were born outside the U.S.?
More than half. That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, software in particular is not a local business. It doesn't have any tie to geography, really. It's only people do. And, you know, that's changed while I've been an investor. When I first started, it was a very local business. It was all Silicon Valley and very local. But it's just not the case anymore. And it's really impressive. And when I first invested in PandaDoc and met Mikita, I just thought, hey, Belarus is an interesting place. I'll get to go visit. Sounds great. I had no awareness whatsoever of what was going to happen. And there's been 2 really big events in the company's lifetime that have been very difficult. the first one, it's in the press. There's been some crackdowns, and I don't know, I'll let you describe what you want to share. But in Belarus, there were issues of a dictator there making life very hard for PandaDoc, the company, and PandaDoc, the employees, in multiple different ways. And we as a board, had to try to help any way we could. We ended up hiring a lobbyist who's basically like a really high-paid lawyer who tries to work through diplomatic channels to try to help you from the US way abroad, something, never would have occurred to me. We did a bunch of other donations and things just to try to make the problem go away. And I don't know if I would say it was successful. It eventually resolved itself. What would you say?
It was successful.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if our results, we did everything we could, but eventually it was successful. And then this incident in Ukraine has hit both of us, both in different ways through our work. And it's become very personal for both of us. So why don't you describe it's a full-time job for Mikita and probably 4 people on his HR and ops staff just dealing with relocation, and you can share some details.
Yeah, we had to relocate close to 100 people out of Belarus at some point. It was a nightmare, right? Like immigrating is hard. For the first time in your life, especially. But then doing it at scale that's another animal. And then when the war in Ukraine broke out, we had to do the same exact thing again. We're still doing it, and it's painful to watch the danger that people go through. It's painful to watch we have employees in Kiev and hiding in the basements, and it's tough. You guys are fortunate to live where you live, and no matter what you believe, to have the government and the political system that you have.
Yeah, and our second investment at Camber is a Ukrainian and Belarusian-based company called SE Ranking, and it's an SEO tool that you may have run across. It's a competitor to SEMrush or Ahrefs, and very good business, very good founders, incredibly strong product execution, really good online marketing execution. And when this broke out, we had a contingency plan, but it was so much worse than we had really, on the spectrum of what could happen, it was way beyond what we were anticipating and prepared for. It costs a lot of money to relocate people. People who aren't allowed to leave Kyiv right now are literally going down to the bomb shelter 6 times a day every time the air raids go off. A lot of them are staying behind out of choice to volunteer. Not all of them are fighting, but they're delivering food, delivering clothes, driving from town to town to make logistics work or to bring food in. It's crazy stories. And then I woke up on Sunday morning and found out that the head of finance for SE Ranking had been killed overnight from Russian shelling. I worked with her, weekly, as recently as a week ago, because she was the head of finance. And she and her 2 children, 18 and 9 years old, were evacuating, and they were in one of these protected, corridors, supposedly, no fire zone, and a Russian shell landed and killed all 3 of them. And there was the New York Times photographer who was close by who ended up capturing it, and it was in cover of NewYorkTimes.com. It's gotten a fair amount of publicity, which on one hand, it's unfortunate, but on the other hand, it's a good thing that it really humanizes the impact of the civilian losses, which you read about and you know that they're happening, but when you know someone and you see a picture of someone, it really hits home, and it's been devastating and heartbreaking for the company too. It's definitely, we're not out of the woods yet. I know PandaDoc has a budget that's going to approach $1 million to relocate 400 plus employees and do what they can to support them. It's going to be more than that, Scott. Yeah, it's whatever's necessary to support them, help them, their family, their children, parents. providing housing, temporary housing, permanent housing, temporary office space. Mikita chartered a plane to take employees out of Belarus because it was very difficult to get on flights. And they could only go to Armenia from Belarus in terms of the flight pattern. I mean, it's been insane.
Guys, we appreciate you opening up and sharing more about this, and obviously the real-time, obviously live situation. I think it's appropriate to ask for a round of applause to show support. So round of applause to show support.
Thank you.
Additionally, this is the call to act, right? You know these guys. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, those are good guys. They support a number of humanitarian initiatives. I know the founder personally. They're trustworthy, and I just thank you for this opportunity. We people who are affected by this try to raise awareness in any way we can, because those of you folks coming from Europe, if this doesn't stop in Ukraine, you'll be the next.
Yeah. So I'd encourage you, if you're in the front row, you're the good students, donate $10. Everyone can do it now. Second row, $20 per person. Third row, $30, and the delinquents in the back row, you've got to put up $40 each. And as I watch all of you donating right now, I'm confident we're going to get to $1,000 donated across. And our reward for doing so is that Nathan has agreed to wear this shirt for the rest of the day. So everyone get your phones out and donate.
What is this? What is it? I will do it. I will do that. Guys, give it up for Scott and Mikita.
Political.